York, how are you? Come on, you guys, it's crazy. So I went to middle school a couple of blocks away from here, and so I've been to this theater a number of times. I used to cut school and come to this theater. You guys are sitting in chairs. I don't know what was done there, but I recommend that you be careful. I also saw Spaceballs. My dad's 89. He will be 89 October 16th, and I saw Spaceballs in this theater. At that time, it was a $1 theater, and now they let people like us come here and pretend that we have something interesting to say. Okay, do I have a PowerPoint, or am I just going off the top of my head, or where are we at in terms of 1 second? Okay, so I'll just tell a few jokes. So a horse walks into a bar, and the bartender says to the horse, "Why the long face?" That's some of my better material. I'm really excited to be here with you guys today. I think Ad Week is one of the, probably one of the more important events on the schedule. I think that what Matt and Danny and team have done here is pretty spectacular in the sense of bringing people from all over the industry together to discuss the challenges that are facing the industry, the opportunities, the future, the potential. I think this year we'll see, but I predict, or I guess we're almost halfway done Ad Week. I've been predicting the things that we're not going to hear talked about. So I think we're going to hear a lot about video. But what we're not going to talk about is the challenge that most marketers still face, which is the cost of creation and the ability to buy reach is greater than it's ever been before. And so how do you create new models? Some of you might have seen us. Right before I left, we launched a thing called media monetization, which was how do we take 10% of our media money and actually make money back, turning ourselves into truly a publisher. There are many brands that we'll talk about. I'm a publisher, but they're really not publishers. What they really are brands that just have a lot of money and they can put their logo really big and try to force people to see it. Publishers actually get paid money for the content that they create, either by a consumer buying it or by an advertiser wanting to advertise against it, which means that it holds themselves up to a totally different standard of quality. And so we tried to push the limit there. I think you're going to hear a lot about messaging. I'm going to talk a little bit about it. But all you're going to hear about is bots. Everybody's going to tell you, you know what? The next engagement model will be a bot talking to a consumer on behalf of a brand. I'm here to tell you that's not the case. There's not the case. And the sad thing is that as an industry, we get wrapped up around one shiny object, and we just spin and we spin and we spin, and then one day we're like, oh, wait, we were so effing wrong here. And I believe that that's what's going to happen. I think bots will play a portion of this game, but it's only going to be a small part, and I'll come and talk about that. And then I think the last thing that you're not going to hear enough about is talent. As an industry, I firmly believe that we are failing to encourage, inspire, and train the next generation of talent. And that makes me very concerned. There's a lot of people who say, oh, we want transformation. We want a change agent. Give me a change agent. Somebody who can pull a rabbit out of the hat and change my entire, where's that one person? And instead we don't realize that the companies that are winning in this battle, the newer generation companies, every single person, Facebook, you just saw, what's her face up here from Facebook? She's on Facebook, you can find her. But Facebook is a great example. They're hiring 24% quarter over quarter. And every single person who works at Facebook believes that they could change the world. Every single person. And that is not the same when you walk into big organizations. So talent is a big issue. So I think we're going to hear a lot about that. But I'm not here to talk about that, although those are my predictions, and I did talk about that, so good luck. You got a little extra. I'm here to talk about from unicorns to dragons. And the whole idea here is, how come the tech space has been able to identify consumer trends, take advantage, and build what could potentially be billion-dollar businesses, but yet large organizations are still slow to move? And what do we learn? And even more than that is if we can get it right inside of large organizations, already scaled platforms, is there a chance to actually build dragons, faster-growing billion-dollar businesses? So I would be remiss if I didn't selfishly plug my new book. You can buy it. Please text me now. I'll sell you a copy. I have no problem doing that. Probably cheaper from Amazon and from me. I charge a markup. Anyway, the point here is that the book I wrote, it's the Freakonomics of the mobile generation. The idea here was to look at the untalked about and undiscussed impact that mobile has had on every single aspect of life, whether it's dating, whether it's parenting, whether it's religion, whether it's politics. And we did 120 interviews with everybody from the owners of Dodgers and the Warriors to Chopra to so on and so forth to Dick Costello when he was still CEO and maybe when Twitter was still around. Is Twitter around? It's hard to tell by the news that maybe somebody owns them, I don't know, I think. Anyway, my point here is that I realized that it wasn't enough to just ask 120 people, and that I wanted to have the largest discourse with the world on how mobile was impacting their lives. And so we decided to put my number on the cover, and we've texted with over 12,000 people to date. I might interject some thoughts from what came out of the book, but what I'm here to talk about is the beginning of a journey, which was interesting. And so if you were a marketing executive in the 1950s, and I came into your office and said, look, I really, really want you to invest in this thing called television, you would laugh me out of your office and say, you know what, I don't need your goddamn television. This thing called radio works really well for me. But what's interesting is that 3 bold brands made the decision to jump into TV early: Unilever, P&G, and Kraft. And what they saw was consumer consumption of television beginning to eclipse where investment is. And I would argue that we're seeing the same thing today, except we don't realize it. In fact, 24% of media is still consumed on a mobile device and clearly rising, but still, what is crazy, still less than 1% of ad dollars are still going into mobility, which means that the world looks something like this. So there is a leader at the front of a boardroom table who says, you know what, I think we need a mobile strategy, and then somebody looks up from their phone very distracted and says, I'm sorry, but did you say something? But what's interesting is this is not just an example of boardrooms around the world, it's actually an example of humanity at large. We have become the most distracted society in human history. But the amazing thing about humans is they'll never admit they're distracted. They'll say, no, no, no. Keep talking to me while I'm texting because I'm doing something I call multitasking. I'm multitasking. But what they're really doing is they're lying to you. And in fact, there was a study that was done. No, they are. I'm going to prove it to you. There was a study that was done. They took 2 groups. They asked one to use their mobile phone and multitask, and they asked another to smoke marijuana. And there was a 10-point drop in the IQ of those that use their mobile phone to multitask, which was twice as much as those that smoke marijuana. So the point here, people, is really simple, is you're better off being a pothead than pretending that you can multitask. But no matter how glaring the facts are, when I show these to senior leaders, they still ask me the same question. They go, Bonin, is mobile at scale? I said, oh, good question. So I did some research. Turns out there are 7 billion people on Earth. 5.1 billion own a cell phone and only 4.2 billion own a toothbrush. So if you believe that toothbrushes are at scale, then clearly mobile phones are. I've actually updated this research since we did that to look at a younger generation, a younger demographic. And it turns out the millennials are doing a little bit better. 93% own a toothbrush, but still only 90% wear deodorant. You might know some of them. They're probably sitting next to you. They're the ones that smell. Okay. I love this slide. It says, honk if you love Jesus, text while driving if you want to meet him. Even our religious institutions understand the importance of mobility. But yet still large organizations are slow to adapt. They're like, oh, we do Facebook. That's mobile, right? I'm like, maybe. Okay. How many people in here have ever felt their phone vibrating, but when they reach in their pocket to check it, they realize it wasn't? Raise your hand. It's everybody. It's not too early. Everybody's hand should be up. It's actually a disease. It's called phantom vibration syndrome. People say that when they have it, it's tactile hallucinations that are very similar to what meth addicts experience. Literally a meth addict. That's what you've all turned into. There are other studies that show that using your mobile device and social media is as addictive as cocaine. So some guy in a dark alley like, oh my God, send me a text message. I just need an emoji. I need 140 characters. I'm dying. I'm fiending. And while we're strung out on this thing, well, maybe me, you guys, maybe not. While we're strung out on this thing called mobility, we don't realize the real impact that it's having on us as a society at large. So we did a little test with the book at South by Southwest. We did one at Cannes as well. We texted with about 6,000 people. I asked people a simple question. I said, what is the last thing you look at before you go to bed? Your phone or your partner? 80% of people were like, oh, I look at my phone. One guy was so pissed off. He's like, oh, you ruined my life. Now I make sure I look at my partner before I go to bed instead of my phone. I was like, you're welcome, and I charge for dating advice. Thank you very much. Just text back yes, and I'll auto-bill your phone. Anyway, so be careful if you text me. But what was interesting was that we don't think about how much relationships have been changed. So when you think about a new generation of dating through use name said apps, One of the things we talked to people about was this idea of FOMO, fear of missing out in a relationship. If the next potential love interest is one right swipe away, how do you know that you've ever found the right person? More interestingly, though, is that it removes a lot of the challenges with dating. So the double opt-in, I swipe, you swipe, now I know that you're interested in me. So it removes a lot of that cultural tension. So it's not good or bad, it's just different. The world is different. We talk to parents. We ask parents a lot of questions. We said, okay, what's the right age to give a kid a cell phone? Nobody knew. The average age tended to be 12, but it was interesting that we're not even thinking about that quite yet as a society. Parents said something interesting to me. They said, the biggest challenge we have is the death of hierarchy. We used to be able to tell our kids, you know what, son? Don't smoke pot. It's not good for you. Do not smoke pot. Now they're like, well, that's funny because your roommate just put up pictures of you doing bong hits in college, so it's weird. Worked out pretty well for you. No. Anyway, so the death of rebellion. So when I was young, I used to be able to say, Mom, I'm going to go to little Jimmy's house, and then I would go wherever I want to cut school, come here, do things on these seats. Anyway, my point here is, now with a GPS in your pocket, how do you rebel? Where do you go? How do you fool your parents, for example, or how do you become? Even more interesting is, when I went to college, I would talk to my mom, maybe at best, once a week. Now, kids talk to their parents every single day, multiple times a day. So if this was supposed to be the one moment when you were supposed to separate from the parental unit and become the you that you would be in your adult life, has that transition been eroded? Does that still exist? The other thing that I find interesting is that 80% of newborn babies have their photo up within the first hour of their birth. So the very first thing they see is the cell phone. Dad's like, smile. You're like, no, I'm coming out of my mom. Leave me alone. This is horrible. This is not the way I want to be posted on Facebook, damn it. Get my better side. And I like Instagram more. And maybe Snapchat, it's a younger generation. So I took that into account and I said, you know what? With new consumer trends, new innovations will be created. I think I'm missing something here. So I came up with this. It's called the Nelfie. The newborn selfie. There's 20% of babies who don't have their photos up. Now moving forward, no baby left behind, people. No baby left behind. We've also turned pee time into me time. You guys all know. You're laughing because this is you, I know. 75% of people, we ask, what's the one behavior you want to change? They texted back, I want to stop taking my cell phone to the bathroom. I said, I want you to stop texting me about taking your cell phone to the bathroom. It's horrible. You don't know me. I'm a stranger, damn it. But it was interesting, some of the stories and anecdotes we have. Somebody talked about how they actually leave dinner with their friends and say they have to go to the bathroom just so they can check Instagram and Facebook. And I was like, you need better friends, man. This is horrible. I feel bad for you. I can't solve all your problems. Like, Jesus Christ. So with that, I figured charging stations in stalls. Come on. Who's with me? Okay. Not all ideas will win. Okay. Anyway, the point here is that there's a huge consumer trend which we're still missing. Even more interesting, I think, that the consumer trend that I'm most interested about now is the transformation into messaging. So in 2011, there was only one app in the top 10 downloaded apps, one messaging app, in the top 10 downloaded apps in the world. Now, if you look, 6 of the top 10 downloaded apps, not including Snapchat, which will clearly be before the end of this year, are now in the top 10 downloaded apps. That's a huge consumer shift that I would argue many organizations, marketers, and people in our industry are missing. 4 billion people are globally active. It is probably the single largest shift in technology, I would argue even greater than social. And if you really sit and wrap your head around it, we as an industry have talked very little about it outside of this notion of a bot. And that, by the way, is still brand new. But the interesting thing is the tech space has moved pretty quickly. This year, almost $6 billion of investment will go into it. And it just points a finger to the fact that what tech is able to do is identify fast-moving consumer trends that could potentially be billion-dollar businesses. If you actually look at the track record, 50 of the top unicorns actually still represent $1.3 trillion. What's interesting, though, while they've been able to identify it pretty quickly, they haven't always been able to be as successful. The hit rate is actually not that great. So here's an example. Gilt was a unicorn and eventually sold for $250 million. Only 25% of identified unicorns will actually become billion-dollar businesses. So that's a 75% failure rate. And so I began to ask myself, if we could identify ideas as fast as the tech space could we move and actually secure the hit rate and actually become more successful at growing billion-dollar businesses? And at the end of the day, can dragons, existing scaled businesses, build dragons? And so a dragon for me is a startup-minded business that, building on the strength of a parent company, launches an industry-disrupting model that moves faster, is stronger, and scales across the organization. Now, the mindset I want you guys to be in is think about an existing big business, resources, opportunity, scale, breadth. Imagine if you can take great ideas and scale them really quickly. How much faster and how much more likely will you be to win? And what's interesting is there's already models that exist. It exists in the tech space. So Apple used to just be a hardware manufacturer. If you really think about it, it used to be a hardware manufacturer. Now, $20 billion of its revenue comes from services. Amazon, the exact same thing, 7.8. They used to sell books. Now, web services represents almost $8 billion. And Google has created so many of these that they had to change their name to Alphabet. Google, right? They're like, oh, we're just the Alphabet. We are everything to everybody. Alphabet. We'll see if they can get this messaging thing right. I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to talk about that right now because I don't want Google to shoot me. They will find you. Anyway, so when I was at my former company before I was unemployed, I asked myself the question, if a tech giant, now I'm like a reality TV host. I hate when they're like, and the host of CNBC's Cleveland Hustle. I'm like, oh, it sounds. Anyway, it's a great show. We'll come back to it. Anyway, tech giant. If tech giants can do it, how come a company like Mondelez can't do it? So we came up with a model. We said, how can you actually create dragons? Because any great idea needs a great model. Simple. 1, how do you hatch dragons? 2, how do you raise dragons and make sure that great ideas don't get crushed inside of large organizations? 3, which is the most important, how do you ride them off into the sunset? How do you actually take the idea that you identified, the one that you protected, and actually have it grow into be a dragon? And so, yes, this is good Photoshop work, people. I don't care what you say. Anyway, you get the metaphor, right? Dragons, you got it, right? Okay, all right, good. All right, moving on. I just want to make sure. 1, I think it's creating, operationalizing identification of great ideas, small ideas, early stage. What we did, and I was part of, when I was at PepsiCo, I launched PepsiCo 10, which was the first kind of these corporate accelerators, startups meet brands. Here we launched Mobile Futures. I took what I had learned from PepsiCo and brought it here, and we changed 3 things. 1, we wanted to make sure that so simple, Mobile Futures, Mobile Accelerator. We do an open call for startups that match to some of the challenges that we had as a large organization so that we can see early innovation, right? Boom, you can do it in anything. Food, products, whatever you want, but that kind of concept. The lessons that we learned here, and I think these are really important. 1, you have to do it at a real pace. So 90 days. So one of the first rules was we had to bring, if we identified a startup that we wanted to work with, we had to bring that project to life within 90 days. 2, we had to have guaranteed funding. So you need to be able to fund ideas enough to know if they can actually work. And I think many organizations are like, oh, no, that's our innovation budget. And it's like, well, there's $4,000. $4,000, we'll see if innovation works with $4,000. Meanwhile, there's a $40 billion company over here. They're like, oh, no, we want innovation. We're innovative. Here's $4,000. Go. Or we used to call them entrepreneurial brands, which basically means, good luck, you have no money, be entrepreneurial. Anyway, so we had guaranteed funding. But the third, which was the most important, is what we wanted to do was change the mindset of the marketer. So the marketers actually had to go and work for the startup for a week. And so we've run it, or it was run across multiple countries. Tons of startups came through it. Things like Waze we've identified early, Shelby, you name it, so on and so forth. What's interesting, so here's pictures of the immersion days that many of them went. What's interesting is every single one of the marketers who went on immersion day came back and they said the same thing. They said, Bonin, should we go work for a startup? I said, no, you should not do that. Because if our top marketers quit, I'll be fired. And at that time, I liked my job. Then I quit anyway. But anyway, my point is, I like my job. I don't want to get fired. Focus, people. We need to focus here. What I said was, imagine taking what you learned and applying it to big brands, resources, scale, brands that people know and love. And when you look at the marketing plans of all the alumni, they all look like some of the most innovative work that I've ever seen. Most important, I think, out of this is they all not only gained the confidence, but gained a Rolodex and connections where they could pick up the phone and they could call Brian Wong, who's in town, by the way. I think here he was 12, maybe. I don't know. maybe 10. Uh, and they could pick up the phone and call somebody like Brian Wong, not be afraid in the meeting with their agency, be as knowledgeable, but also pick up the phone and call somebody who's in the space and say, hey, what do you think of this? What's the new thing? You know, so we helped them build a network and a mindset which was vastly different. Okay, so identification. Next thing is raising dragons. I know, it declines from here, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. It does. I can't keep up the Photoshop here. Anyway, one, I think the culture of an organization is important. And so I was very lucky that our CMO, Dana Anderson, if you've never seen her speak, please watch her. She is mind-blowing, but she's also inspirational beyond belief. She gave a talk at Facebook this one time, which I don't even think is publicly available, but it was one of the best talks I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, she came in, and when I started, she said, she laid down this edict of being fearless. She said, we want to be fearless marketers, marketers that do things that no other marketer is willing to do, that transforms the way brands grow in ways that most people have never even thought of. And so the culture of an organization is vastly important. Oops, sorry. And when you get it all right, you end up with work that looks something like this. Audio? Audio? Should I go again? No? Okay.
This is all we got. This is our team right here, and nothing's gonna break this team up.
American families have changed.
Sometimes we get looks just from being a mixed family.
And while they may look different, they're still as wholesome as ever. And who better to say this than the beloved brand American families grew up with? Honey Maid. Everyday wholesome snacks for every wholesome family. This campaign was the first time an American brand had so clearly stood up for all families. This is wholesome. And the nation took notice.
Honey Maid featuring both interracial and gay parents in an ad for graham crackers that's been viewed more than 5 million times.
Honey Maid's hashtag, this is wholesome on fire.
But unfortunately, a lot of people didn't agree with our message. We were threatened with a boycott. We were called sinful.
Even the right-wing conservative group 1 Million Moms calling the ad a, quote, attempt to normalize sin.
But instead of backing down, we asked two artists to take every negative tweet, comment, and post, print them out, roll them up, and turn hate into love. And the best part was all the positive messages we received. Over 10 times as many. With over 270,000 shares on social media, this simple video earned over 250 million impressions from social and PR alone. And for the week it launched, it was the most shared commercial in the world. Perhaps a chart showing Google searches for Honey Maid over the last 10 years says it best. Honey Maid. In less than 1 month, it went from a cracker people love to a brand people love.
I mean, that was a graham cracker, people. It's not like, I mean, this is kind of crazy. But what I think is most interesting about that story is that, you know what, I think I have another video coming up. I'm going to stand down here. What I think is most interesting about that story is that Gary Oshipskin, who was the brand manager of Honey Maid at the time, you know, you can imagine he comes into the office, shows this, senior leadership, like, whoa! This might be a little too much for us. I'm not going to lie to you. And he said, look, more importantly than anything is that the largest percentage of Americans are actually, can you hear me? Yeah, hello. The larger percentage of Americans are actually live in families that are not considered quote unquote wholesome. And so from a business perspective, the opportunity is this, should I hold it again? Or what? Can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. So the largest, you know, so the business opportunity is huge. He also said the other thing is that I actually happen to come from one of these families which is not considered quote unquote wholesome. Same sex. And He said, I believe that this is a message that a brand should stand behind and that we should bring out to the world. And as a result, again, a graham cracker had one of the most beloved and shared ads. But I just think it points to the nature of building the right culture. Slides or? Okay, sorry. There's like 2 more videos. I'm down here with you guys now. So the other piece, I think, is investing in talent. And so one of the things that I was very lucky to be a part of during my days there, and I still continue to be, is a platform called Brand U. So for the last 2 years, Brand U is part of a company called High Potential Ventures. Actually, today at 1 o'clock at the NASDAQ building, there is a half-day session on it. Gary Vee will be there. I'll be there. But what the whole idea here was, most people are more deliberate about the brands that they market and the services that they sell or the products that they sell than they are about their own career. And what I wanted to do, somebody asked me, if you could create an event, what would you create? I said, you know what? I want something that transforms people's lives. And so at the end of the day, what we tried to do was create an event that helps to shape the roadmap for people. Ask them to take 2 days out of their lives. It's a very small event, 20 people, and help them begin to think about how they grow their career. Because what happens, and it was aimed at high potentials, which I'm sure many of you, or if not all of you in this room are, what happens with high potentials, some of you are, right? He's like, not me. Anyway, or low potentials. We have a low potential event. It's called happy hour. Anyway, so you drink your sorrows and you hope that, no. So my point here is that high potentials fly through the organization and then they hit a wall because they run into every other high potential. And what they don't realize is that what got them to where they are today will not necessarily get them to where they are tomorrow. So we try to teach the roadmap. We try to provide coaching. I'll show a little video and then I'll come back and just close it out. Sorry. Okay.
In order to propel your career, you have got to be clear on what you bring and what you need.
What do you feel are things that connect, and what do you feel are things that are still a little bit of a challenge or education needed for a large organization to fully grasp on how innovation and being sort of thinking like in an entrepreneurial way could actually help them in moving forward.
But I really feel like Brand U is giving me tools that I need to learn how to grow my career within the organization.
It's a great way to think about how to manage people. How do you keep them engaged by giving them more and more opportunities to develop their strengths? How do you divvy up the work that needs to be done in a way that makes sense based on the strengths on your team?
The biggest takeaways for me right now have been from the panel discussions from industry leaders.
It's interesting, people have a view of basically leaders as pound the desk. And for me, I think if you have a combination of curiosity and humility, curiosity to ask why and take risks, humility to actually listen to other people and collect the best information, you need to have a certain amount of risk-taking and boldness to basically make moves.
If you just think, if I talk to my direct reports or my manager talks with me about my strengths and how to use my strengths, that alone increases engagement. So this has a profound effect on your company's profitability and your productivity.
Every organization wants to be faster. When push comes to shove, there's a nervousness with speed. We need to compel the organization to be able to say, I want to be like that person because they just took a risk and they did something great. So I want to be more comfortable taking risks myself.
But being able to think about the principles and start to create change within the organizations that we're in.
It's okay if my voice is different from some of the guys in the room or even some of the women in the room, but finding my voice the right way is what's important. I knew the business super well. I knew the data, I knew the facts. So when I was sharing my voice, it was grounded in knowledge. It wasn't just me spouting things off. There's nothing worse than people just spouting things off. So know your stuff, know your facts, know your consumer, know the business, know the data, form an opinion, and then just share it however's comfortable for you. And hopefully your corporate environment will support that.
I just think of my overall career and my overall brand, learn some great tips as I look to always grow and improve myself.
Look, the one thing I realized doing this for too long to tell you guys. But anyway, one thing I realized is that it's all about the people you work with. It's all about the talent that sits inside your organization. In fact, Bain did a study and they showed that by 2030, talent will be the biggest determinant of growth for an organization. Bigger than energy, bigger than infrastructure, bigger than data. Talent, talent, talent. And many organizations fail to actually inspire and encourage their talent to grow. And so that's what we try to do here. We try to take all the lessons that we've learned, so we bring in the best coaches, everything from executive coaches to trainers that help you think about the brand of you. I know that that sounds like a weird thing, but realistically, every single time you interact with somebody, you leave an impression. Every single email that you send, every single piece that you write, if you choose to go that way and be external, every single one of those interactions actually leaves some impression on people. And what we try to do is help you think about, how do you manage that? We talk about things like buzz inside of an organization. I don't care if you've been in the organization for 2 days, 6 months, 6 years, 30 years, there is a buzz about you, something that people think, something that's being said, something that's being shared. We talk about how to understand that, how to identify that, how to manage that. Because at the end of the day, when you are going for that next role, when you have aspirations to grow in your career, when they are evaluating you for those next positions, they're not like, hey, you know what, we're thinking about your next role, why don't you come in the room? No, they're not. Those decisions are being made, and you are not in the room. And so what we try to do is help you think about, how do you accelerate your career? How do you go even faster and further than you even thought? We take people like Morgan, who is the CMO of Gatorade, or Peter Guber, or Ryan Kavanaugh, or Ed Earhart, the president of NBC, ESPN, or the president of NBC. We take those people and we put them in a room with just 20 people, and we ask them questions, not about the industry. Who cares? You can go to a ton of things and talk about the industry. We ask them, how did you get to where you are? What were the struggles that you faced? What did you learn? What are the lessons you would tell a 25-year-old you, a 30-year-old you? We try to give you guys the tools to make sure that you have a chance to accelerate your career beyond what you even thought was possible. So that's brand new. So my point here is, how do you invest in talent? Culture, talent. The next thing is, when you have a small idea, how do you bring it through the organization in a way that it doesn't die? We had this little idea called media monetization, this idea that we wanted to create content that actually made us money back. We started off with a simple game. It was called Twist, Lick, and Dunk. It was an Oreo game. And the story is simple. 2 brands came to me, 2 gum brands. They said, Bonin, we want to build a game. I said, I love it. Let's build some games. Let me introduce you to some game developers. They said, no, game developers. We don't need your game developers. We've got our agencies. And I said, I love our agencies. And the agency guys were like kind of half smart. Anyway, I love our agency guys. I was ex-agency. I love them. But they don't build games for a living. I think you should trust me on this. They said, no, Bonin, we've got this. We don't need your help. Each one paid $1 million. One got 16,000 downloads. Another one got 64,000 downloads. I was so pissed that I said, you know what? I'm going to find somebody who's going to trust me for once in my life. I'm going to find someone other than my mom. I found Cindy Chen, who became kind of like my mom. Yelled at me like she was. Anyway, my point is, Cindy Chen, she ran Oreo at the time. I said, look, let's build a game. Twist, Lick, and Dunk. I said, let me find a game developer. So anyway, we took $175,000. We found a game company called Pickpock out of New Zealand. We gave them 3 rules. We said, 1, don't desecrate the Oreo, because if you do, I will hunt you down in New Zealand. I know every single goat or cow, whatever they have down there, I'll find you amongst those things. 2, if you can get the ritual Twist, Lick, and Dunk in, then that's great. But 3 is the most important. I want you to make the game make money. 11 million downloads later. You can't see it here. We actually sell ads inside of the game. It's cash positive. We were the #1 app in 6 countries, gaming app in 6 different countries, top 10 in a ton. My point here is that people play this now for 2 minutes and 41 seconds. There's been billions of Oreos dunked. My point is that we took a model that turned us really, truly into a publisher, and it forced us to create a great user experience. And then we actually are making money off of it, which is insane. And the crazy thing is, Pickpock was like, you know what, we want to stop competitive ads from going. I was like, no, don't do that. If they're stupid enough to pay for ads in my game, take their money, man. Take that money. Don't leave it on the floor. Anyway, so we moved that model over to a thing we call Cheese Rank. Cheese Rank is really simple. It's like the BuzzFeed for cheese. 5 reasons to eat stinky cheese. 3 reasons why cheese is good on crackers. It was brought to you by Ritz. We actually sell ads in this as well. 18 months later, cash positive platform. Sell this out. If you just saw Laura Henderson, who actually ran media monetization for me before I left, just launched a partnership BuzzFeed platform where 50%, I believe it's 50%, you got to check with her. I don't even know if I'm technically allowed to talk about this. But anyway, 50% of the revenue from the platform goes back to Mondelez, but the fastest growing BuzzFeed site that they've ever had right now. So this kind of new model here. So we took that model, and then about a month and a half ago, did anybody see this crazy dude jump out of an airplane with no parachute on? Raise your hand. Yeah, okay. So that was us. So we took that, and here is that. Oh, no, it's the wrong video, guys. All right, you know what? We're just going to go.
I am Luke Akins, and I was born to fly. My life is dedicated to pushing the envelope of human flight. On Red Bull Stratos, I developed techniques that helped Felix Baumgartner become the first man to break the speed of sound by free falling from 128,000 feet. After that, I helped create Red Bull Aces, a 4-cross wingsuit race pushing the sport to the next level.
Awesome.
What's next? Something that has never been done. Later this year, as part of a live television event, I will be jumping from 25,000 feet. I'll have O2, GPS, and comms. What I won't have is a parachute. Over the past 6 months, my team...
I'm gonna just stop right here since it's the wrong video. So really quickly, if you guys saw it, so Luke Akins, it's actually apropos, I guess, this video. This video came to me 3 years ago at Adweek, actually. So 3 years to the date. And it was a guy named Jimmy Smith. And Jimmy said, you know what, I have this idea. I want this guy to jump out of the sky with no parachute, no wingsuit, and land safely on the ground. I was like, I'm in. That's me. Sign me up for that one. We didn't know what brand, we didn't know what creative. Loosely in my mind, I had the idea that we should put it on Stride because Stride was probably the only brand that could carry that off. Actually, at the same time, I wanted to do something called Stride Games. Stride was sponsoring the Dew Tour. I was like, why are we paying Mountain Dew to have a Dew Tour? Let's have the Stride Tour and then charge Mountain Dew for it. Let's flip this model around on them. So I wanted to tie this to Stride Games, which was supposed to be like the emerging sports, so like one-wheel skate, parkour, all the emerging sports. And we were going to have this guy jump. He was going to be the opener for it. And then we were going to launch the games, and that was going to be a television platform that progressed on and on. It was interesting because he came to me and he was like, look, write me a check. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I know that that's what everybody wants me to do, except for now. People are like, oh, we used to be friends. Now we're not because you can't write checks anymore. Anyway, so my point is that I'm not going to write a check. I said, what I'm going to do, it's really hard for me to get $8 million to sponsor this thing from a brand that probably doesn't even have that much in their marketing budget. What we're going to do is we're actually going to put it as part of this media monetization concept that we have, and we're going to own the IP. And we're going to turn around and we're going to sell it to Fox, sell it on pay-per-view, sell it internationally. So we're actually going to become real, true media owners, and that's literally what we did. We underwrote it, $8 million, turned around and sold it, and eventually cash positive. It's actually made money. Name another brand that had an hour, and they're also selling now the Nat Geo documentary as well. Name another brand that's had almost 2 hours of content that are actually literally making money from the whole world saw with a guy jumping out of the sky. But anyway, and what was interesting is I think that this is a model of, it took 3 years to move it through the organization. And people asked, we had a panel on it yesterday, well, it's just about being relentless, not letting something die. Showing that the whole idea of media monetization was what we were moving through the organization, showing that we had a track record. We did it on Twist, Lick, and Dunk at a really small scale. We did it at, so it's almost like MVPs all the way up. We did it on Cheese Rag. We had a BuzzFeed deal, which we had done even before this one launched, and now we were doing this at a major scale. So my point is that as you think about taking ideas, and ultimately this will 10% of one of the largest media budgets in the world will ultimately make money back by 2020. So as you think about ideas inside of organizations, you have to kind of protect them and move them along and don't let them die, but be relentless. 3 years later, like Jimmy was like, is it gonna happen? I'm like, dude, he said a year from now on the video, but in reality it took 3 years from when that video was kind of crafted. So belief that you can move things through. I have to wrap up because I know that we're running out of time a little bit, so I'm going to move a little faster. The last piece is riding dragons. Again, I told you the Photoshop work was not going to be at the same level as the very first one was. So how do you take small ideas and actually turn them into potential billion-dollar businesses? I'm going to tell a little quickly the story of Oreo, which many of you know. So here you go. What's interesting is that I don't think people realize Oreo 5 years ago, well, now it's on the tip of everybody's tongue and Oreo 5 years ago hadn't changed their marketing in forever. It was Oreo, what you like that? What everybody grew up with, mom and kid, twist licking, like that was it. I remember walking in and thinking to myself, oh my God, what did I do? I came from Pepsi, Gatorade, like Oreo, like really? I'm not 8 to 12. I don't own an 8 to 12-year-old if that's what you do with them. I don't know whether you own them or have them. I don't even know what you do with these things. And so I figured, what does this mean? It means nothing to me. This brand means absolutely nothing. And I walk into this meeting, and on the wall, there were these 4 print ads. One was a quarter of an Oreo on a white page. It looked like it was swimming through milk. And it said Jaws, whatever, 1968 or whatever it was. And there was another one with the moon landing. I thought to myself, wow, there's something unique and interesting there. We had some digital money. We were trying to do some digital programs. At that time, Facebook was coming out with Timeline. So I called the agency. I'm like, look, I was in London. I'm like, look, here's what we should do. We should create Timeline for 100 years. It was the 100th anniversary. And we should create a couple of these pieces that signify years. And we should let consumers fill them in. And they were like, thanks, Bonin, but that's not what we're going to do. So they said, instead, what we're going to do is for 100 days, we're actually going to create something that's culturally relevant. I'm sure you guys have seen the case study, so I won't go into it. But this was the very first post, one of the most liked posts at the moment. Zuckerberg sent a note saying, thank you, we're so proud that you used our platform to actually stand for something. It was great. We all felt good. But that gave us the confidence and the energy to then move on and kind of continue to break the barriers. Where you guys have seen kind of the tweet heard around the world, Dunk in the Dark. I'm sure you guys all know that. That then spawned an actual transition of the overall brand communication, and it ended up with the platform that is currently being used by Oreo, which is wonderful.
Wonder if I gave an Oreo to the big bad wolf, how would the story go? Would he still go huff and puff, or would he bring those pigs cool stuff to decorate the deck he helped them build? Would they not get killed? Wonder if I gave an Oreo to a vampire in a creepy show. Would he not act so undead? Would he thirst for milk instead? I've just got this feeling that it might work out alright. 'Cause cream does wondrous things inside a chocolate sandwich dream. If I gave them to great white sharks, would they share them with baby seals? Would they call up a giant squid for a friendly meal? Wonder if I gave an Oreo. Wonder if I gave an Oreo. What if I gave an Oreo to you?
So here, literally a Facebook post was able to take a 100-year-old brand, transform the thinking of the organization, and bring about an entirely new territory of wonder, where all of a sudden wonder opens up the door for us to not just communicate in different ways, but to be relevant to all generations who ever thought that they could wonder about creativity or wonder about anything. That gave rise to what we created, which was the first ever 3D printed Oreo. So it was called Trending Vending. And the idea here was, if the first post that we did was about seeing culture through the eyes of an Oreo, imagine if you could actually taste it. And so we printed Oreos based on what was trending on Twitter. Last video, I promise.
South by Southwest Interactive in Austin, Texas. We invited festival goers to the Trending Vending Lounge to participate in an experiment. What would happen if your Oreo cookie joined the social network? Our prototype vending machines take what's trending on Twitter and turns those trends into custom Oreos. Using unique transparent touchscreens, users scroll through a list of trending topics, each related to a particular flavor combination and pattern. Advanced algorithms translate the tweets into custom cookies. In all, there are about 10,000 possible combinations. Users can also mash up two trends to further customize their experience. The resulting cookie combines elements of the two original trends. Once the user hits Make Cookie, the real magic happens. Using some repurposed 3D printing technology and a pneumatic pump system, we've enabled festival attendees to watch as their custom cookie is robotically printed and assembled. The final cookie is dropped into a cup, vended, and is now ready to enjoy.
I know what you guys are thinking. Who's that glass hole? You're wearing Google Glass, damn it. What's interesting is that it's really, really difficult to turn bits into atoms. We had to create a hyper-snacking markup language. We had to figure out algorithms that actually change a tweet sentiment into an actual taste. It was really interesting, but what was more interesting is that people waited online for 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours for one cookie. I was like, God damn it, go to the store. We sell cookies. You can buy them, you don't have to wait on this line. But they waited online because they wanted to have a custom experience with a brand that's been in their life for probably as long as they can remember. And what was interesting is what came out of that was one of the supply chain guys saw this and was so blown away. He said, you know what, Bonin, I think we can create this en mass custom. I was like, oh, you're ruining my life. That means now I have to take on e-commerce. So then I decided to take on our e-commerce business. And as of last Christmas, we shipped what was called Color Filled, the first ever custom product, a 102-year-old brand for the very first time, shipped direct to consumer and allowed you to actually customize your experience. You could go online, you could choose from 2 different images, you could stretch it, you could move it, you could skew it, you could literally color every single aspect. You could choose different words, you could choose a hat, you could choose a scarf, but more important is you could actually write your own personalized message in the top where it says Happy Holidays there. You could write anything you want. Some people said, oh, will you marry me? Proposal. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Another person was like, it's a boy. I was like, do not deliver that to the wrong person. Because they're like, oh, what do you mean? We weren't even trying. It's a boy. No. So, but it also began a journey, where we set our stakes to build a $1 billion e-commerce business, but it also began a journey on custom where the organization believes that custom will be a potentially significant part of their offering in e-commerce. And the closing point here really on Oreo is that from a small little Facebook post to what became kind of the beacon of the future of an organization, as long as you don't let those ideas, and I can tell you that Facebook post generated a ton of controversy. If you see the video, people are, Oreos are gay, and so, but we still protected that, and we were able to create something that was transformational to a brand, but more importantly, transformational to an organization. You all know that I'm doing this, and the nice thing about this is we actually took a TV model and reinvented it. The idea was to create something that can reinvent neighborhoods across the world, starting with Cleveland. We take 4 local investors. They invest in entrepreneurs that are willing to build that are willing to build storefronts on Main Street. What I don't think we realize, and I learned this over the last 8 years, it's become really cathartic to me, the last 8 months, it's become very cathartic. What we don't realize is that small businesses are the lifeblood for transforming neighborhoods across the world, especially in the US. But the challenge is that small businesses are under attack like we've never seen before. 70,000 less small businesses will be opened up this year versus last. And over the last 10 years, small business openings are 20% in decline. Small businesses fail a lot of times because they don't have access to capital. 80% of them fail in the first 18 months because they don't have access to capital and don't know how to take ideas that can scale. What we've tried to do is bring capital and bring big business thinking. And you will see me reach out continually to my network, hopefully some of you. I need big business thinkers, people who know how to scale businesses, to come and help entrepreneurs that are building the real infrastructure of our neighborhoods, the bagel stores, the florists, the things that your kids go to, the candy stores, the delis, day in and day out, the restaurants. I watched, the story that really rattled me was there was a neighborhood called Tremont in Cleveland where Michael Simon, the award-winning chef, opened up a restaurant on one end, and then Fahrenheit open up on the other end. 8 years ago, you couldn't walk down this neighborhood. 8 years ago, you couldn't even own a house here. 8 years ago, you could get a house if you just squatted in one. And now, 8 years later, the largest summer outdoor festival in Ohio happens in Tremont. They've reinvented the neighborhood, and they did it with integration of existing and also new. And so this has become a really big mission of mine. In fact, we delivered 60 jobs into the neighborhood. We delivered $800,000 worth of capital. An additional $2 million has come in as a result of us highlighting. Yes, I think that we have a real chance to change neighborhoods across the world. Anyway, you guys have heard enough of me, from unicorns to dragons. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of Ad Week!